I know this is supposed to be a Venom episode, but just listen. I had something that happened that made my absolute day today. We were going down the steps and walking down the steps, and he was looking at me saying, "Mama Stoots, Stoots." So he was calling me Mama because he likes to do that sometimes just to get a rise out of us. And he wanted me to scooch down the steps with him. And I looked at him, I said, "Buddy, who am I?" And I started pointing to my chest, and I'm wearing a Batman t-shirt today with the big Batman logo in the middle. And he looks at me and goes, "Batman." So, Bub says I'm Batman, therefore I am Batman. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table next to last week's stale donuts. Just didn't feel like cleaning them up, and you guys didn't need enough. So if you are returning, thank you for your continued support. I am Unbuckled Cape, your host of this comic review podcast. This week we are going to be jumping back into Venom Part 2. We did Part 1 2 weeks ago. Last week we actually had the interview with Keith Williams. If you have not, please, please, please go check that out. Otherwise, sit tight. We're gonna jump back into the whole Agent Venom saga with Volume 1. We're going to be looking at the back half of that trade. And yeah. Before we head out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. Jeez. Excuse me. Um, yeah, so linktree.com. That's where you can find all my links. It's linktr.ee/slash unbuckled comics. If you go over there, you'll see all the links to my social medias, my YouTube, uh, the Spotify's, the other places you can get my podcast, just all the links. All the links are over there. And I will mention just a couple more times. I'll soon won't have to say this anymore, but July 1st, Patreon is ending. I am going to be removing my Patreon July 1st. So if you head over to Linktree and think, oh, okay, well let me toss this guy some extra dull hairs, don't do it. Don't do it. So yeah, outside of that, guys, I don't have a lot to talk about this intro. I had an off week, I guess. Uh, I posted nothing for people to comment on, and the Unbuckled tournament finished up, and I am definitely waiting till at least after the Hershey Comic Con until I put up another one of those, and we also have to do a Venom case file, as I like to call it, or not a Venom, it's Green Goblin. Venom was the loser. We got to do a Green Goblin case file where I take an in-depth look at the character and talk about the personalities and the physical media that they've been in, movie, TV shows, highest grossing comic, things like that. Most notable storyline with Green Goblin. I think that one's pretty easy to tell which one that is going to be. So, excuse me. I've been coughing quite a bit lately. A combination of our dry AC and the pollen outside. So, uh, thankfully, this episode was recorded before that hit, and yeah, I'm starting to ramble. Next week, no, this week. As this episode is coming out, this is a big week for you guys as far as content, especially if you are already on that Patreon and you're sticking around to the very end. This episode is releasing on Tuesday. It is the, again, Agent Venom Part 2 that we are looking at. And then on Thursday, I am releasing two episodes. One is the Patreon episode where I sat down with a few guests. That's right, we had a triangle, a little love triangle over Batman 1989, the Tim Burton film. Uh, Nicholson, Keaton, Batman. That one. So that is coming out for you Patreoners, my Kid Crusaders, and for the rest of you, you're actually going to get my interview with D.G. Chichester, who is a longtime writer for comics. Had a very, very uh, pop. I was looking for a better word than popular, and I was going to say accoladed, but that's not even a word. Had a very famous run on Daredevil, and among a bunch of other things, spent some time as editor. He's coming on to the show to join us as our last pre-show interview for the Hershey Comic Con, which again is in Hershey, Pennsylvania on June 29th and 30th. But that is coming up in a couple of days. But right now, let's just move right on into Venom Volume 1, Part 2. So, like, all the while, Flash's dad is passing away, and Betty's, like, imploring him to come back and, make sure that he's there in time for the passing. And unfortunately, Flash does not make it. And Flash is grieving along with Betty and, hasn't had time to contact contact his mother and sister, and there's all this stuff going on. But then the government calls and says, hey, let's go get this Spider Queen. It's time to end this. So Flash has to leave, and he has Betty, kind of like stow away and try to keep her safe while he goes after the Spider Queen. But she gives him a letter that she had penned for his dad to him in case that his dad wouldn't get to see him before his passing. So Flash goes off to battle the Spider Queen, but the whole time that this is happening, we're getting the I don't know if it's really the monologue as much as it is we're reading this letter in place of a narration is what's going on. So instead of Flash narrating what's going on, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but overall we're reading the letter that Flash's dad had written to him. And the Spider Queen is tough and has him outclassed, but because of the way they chose to write this, it is supposed to make you feel that Flash is not on the top of his game. He is being held back by a lot of the things that are going on around him, like the passing of his father. The whole thing is like a comment on breaking generational habits. Flash's father is writing about his drunkenness, how he treated the family, and how he believes that Flash is so much better than him. And although I don't have a strong connection to either of these two characters, because this is my first story where Flash is the forefront in it still holds quite a bit of emotion for a Venom comic, because remember, going back to stories where Eddie Brock is the Venom host, we get a lot of stories that it's just a bunch of anti-hero stuff going on. And then when you move forward and Mark Gargan takes a hold of the Venom and he becomes the sinister Spider-Man, like, those are just dark, brutal stories where he's basically just running around eating people. To be fair, I've only read one of those comics and I didn't really enjoy it. Maybe that's one we'll pick up here soon. That way I can just kind of poop on one. I kind of like poo-pooing on things. So anyway, the letter is a deep emotional story, and it kind of actually takes away from what is going on action-wise. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do know what a bad thing is. Flash gets help from the famous Avenger that he saved that was turned into the Spider King, and they are able to defeat Spider Queen, and then she turns into final form, like straight up Dragon Ball Z. They think they have her beat, and then she turns into her gigantic, like 3-story tall spider thing that kind of actually reminds you of the Spider Monkey combination in the one Spy Kids movie. I think it was the second one. A reference pulled out of way back, way out in left field. The unfortunate thing that I am hinting at here is the story is actually finished in is actually finished in Amazing Spider-Man, and it is not in this trade. So we don't even get to see what happens at the end of Spider Island. Issue number 9 moves on, and it picks it up in the aftermath where Flash is racing to find Betty. He is interrupted by a bank robbing and this nobody in like a super tank. Now, this part of the story is actually pretty good. This guy in the super tank, he calls himself the hijacker, and he is just, like I said, a nobody who developed this tank. It's supposed to be impenetrable, and he is taking advantage of the Spider Island thing to go and steal money from banks. Nothing major. And he kills a guy on his way in, and then as he is running from Venom, he runs over a mom and a child in the streets, and Flash loses control and just absolutely goes berserk. And the tank runs over Venom, and like Venom goes into this big goop, and you know exactly what's happening. Like he's just hitching a ride back to the guy's place, and the guy gets back to his place, and he jumps out, and he actually shows remorse for hurting people and killing people, but he's justifying it as it's not my fault, it's Venom's fault, this and that. And then Venom appears to him, and well, actually like bites his head off. Like he goes old school Venom on him and just munches the guy's head right off. And this is different because this time, like, Flash barely even fights losing control and shows like no remorse of like biting the dude's head off. We seen in other comics where like Eddie Brock has done stuff like that, and he fights it like, oh, we shouldn't be, eating people like that. There are sometimes they're really bad guys, he just lets it happen, but like Flash has it happens and then just kind of walks away, and we get back to the Flash and Betty saga where like she's safe, and we go back to the whole grieving process. And again, it plays into what we had seen in issue number 8, where it's really the question of who is in the driver's seat. Is he bonded for too long? Issue number 10, it goes back to the stuff that made the first 6 issues really good. Jack-o'-lantern shows up to Flash's father's funeral, posing as a war comrade and someone that Flash is sponsoring in the AA. So Jack-o'-lantern shows up to the funeral, which angers Flash. Then he says that they're war buddies, and Flash saves him, so making Betty have sympathy and like Jack, and then saying that Flash sponsors them in the AA, making Flash look more like a hero than what he is, and convinces Betty that he needs Flash because he's, relapsing, and he basically is able to kidnap him in broad daylight and takes him to Crime Master, who is blackmailing him. Of course, if you don't do this for me, we're going to kill your family. So Flash goes back to his base of operations and wants to take the symbiote, and Captain America is sent by the government to shut the whole project down. And we get a little fisticuffs between Venom and Captain America, and actually Venom kind of handles it pretty easy, which is slightly disappointing, but points more to the fact that Cap is trying to make that the Venom symbiote is too dangerous for any one person to have. So we're almost to the end. We have 2 more issues out of this story, and then the bonus one at the end. And I have high expectations. We were riding such a high in the beginning, and then the Spider Island kind of dipped it, but we're picking it right back up, and I have high expectations for the end. Issue number 11 is a cross road trip with Jack and Flash. They are heading to Vegas. Jack has to travel with them because if not for Jack, Flash wouldn't know what he is supposed to steal for Crime Master. Flash's whole motivation in the situation is get what they want, get them all in the same room, kill them all, and be done with this. Turn in the symbiote, go back to living a somewhat normal life, right? He is just done with all of this. On the way, there is a mine that collapsed, and Flash actually convinces Jack-o'-lantern to help him save everyone, which is kind of funny. And then like there's one person that's stuck, so Jack just kills him, and it's just showing how ruthless this guy is, right? They have a chance to save everybody, but and look, the guy that he kills is probably going to die anyway because of his injuries, but Jack just has like no remorse. He is a psychopath, right? Then at a diner, we get Jack's origin story. Nothing overly special here. He was just, a bad child, acted out a lot. Halloween was his favorite holiday, and he ran away from his parents so he could go get the candy that he wants and trick or treat. And he is actually kidnapped by Crime Master, and Crime Master raised him and, manipulated his mind. And Jack is kind of like, just brainwashed into thinking that Crime Master is his, maybe not biological dad, but the dad that he was meant to have, and he is just his hitman. And it's a sad story, but it's nothing. Like, I'm glad we get it because now I know who Jack-o'-lantern really is, but it's not the most exciting part of the story. And then he also kills people at the diner before they leave without Flash knowing, so, more death. Number 12 is where this story ends, and Venom and Jack hit a casino in Vegas that, for some unexplained reason, is housing the toxin symbiote. And when the Venom symbiote figures out what's there, again, Flash loses all control, and Venom is trying to kill the toxin symbiote before it gets away and finds a host. To be honest, it's a letdown. I mean, he loses control once he finds out that he was sent after it, and then Jack runs scared because he's terrified of the Venom symbiote in full control of Flash because it doesn't care. He has to talk, as he's running, he's trying to talk Flash into getting back in control by, again, threatening his family. And listening to Jack's pleas of reason, Flash does regain control, and Jack-o'-lantern gets away. And then Flash calls Betty and breaks it off with her, leaving his family far distance from him so that he can just crawl back into a bottle. Not a great ending. I really, really do wish that this was different. I know that there's a volume 2, and volume 2 picks it up, but the thing is I know that I've read that a couple of times as well, and I don't really remember anything. It is noteworthy that also at the end, General Ross, who is the Red Hulk, is sent to go after Agent Venom as well. So it does build up a little bit for Volume 2, but this could have ended much different. We will get to this after we talk about the 13th book in this, which is Deadpool Venom. And actually, you know what? Let's come back. No, I'll finish this because I don't want to. Okay, so Deadpool Venom is stupid. Like, it is so stupid. Like, how stupid is it? Let us count the ways. 1, this takes place in Earth 615.9. If you don't know, the main Marvel universe is 616. So this is 615.9. Look, I'm all for dad jokes and dumb jokes and things like that. And this wouldn't have been bad if it stopped there. The other reason it's terrible is it just makes a ton of like late 90s, early 2000 references, and they're not funny. They're not great. There are jokes that aged very poorly. The story itself is boring. Nothing really makes sense. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Venom symbiote. Like, the Venom symbiote attaches itself to Deadpool and it changes his outlook, but that's like literally it. It is not Venompool that we know from Earth 616. It's just a Venom with a different look and sharp teeth. Or it's just a Deadpool with a different look and sharp teeth. Like, it is so dumb. And it's so stupid that it ends with Deadpool destroying the universe because he's a jealous attention whore. Like, it is so bad. And I don't even know why they bother with putting this in there. And, like, there isn't a single joke that I really laughed at. And it is so pointless. And after the drop-off in the main story in this trade, this was just like the kick in the nads afterwards. It is not a good story whatsoever. So to wrap up this whole thing, let's get away from the stupid Deadpool Venom comic and just focus on what we really wanted to read. Agent Venom is cool, but what hurts is the Spider Island arc. It's like Marvel was getting ready to do the Spider Island arc and looked over at these guys making an Agent Venom comic and went, hey, we really like your character. Stop what you're doing and come work on the Spider Island arc with us. And it just never really recovered from that. Like, the dip in story hit drastically, and it totally derailed the story that was interesting and fun, and it just never recovered from having that break. And like I said earlier, I have Volume 2, but I don't really remember it being much different from this, which is really unfortunate because it starts out so strong. And if I don't remember Volume 2 being much better, and if, when I started doing this podcast, I looked at all the comics on the shelf, and this wasn't one that jumped out at me that said, hey, you got to review this one. That tells me that Volume 2 isn't much better. And it's so unfortunate. And I feel like there could have been so much more done with this, but because of the Spider Island arc slapped in the middle of it, the pacing got thrown off. And then all of a sudden, so if this was 12 issues fully dedicated to Agent Venom and his story with Crime Master and Jack-O-Lantern, this could have been so much better. You could have had an extra what? Here, let me flip through my notes. I know that's kind of bad podcasting because you guys can't see what I'm doing, but let's see. So issue number 6, 7, and 8. Oh, and 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 issues that we spent on Spider Island that could have spent on flashing out Flash Thompson's relationship with the Venom symbiote. We could have got more of what's to come in this one. We could have had a couple of smaller missions that he went on, some more blackmailing from Crime Master. We could have built this up a lot better and then had a better finish to this trade. And it didn't happen because of the Spider Island arc. I do have the Spider Island trade here, and I might read that and give that a review on here just to see if, was the Agent Venom part of this very important to it, or was it just someone that they wanted wrapped in because it's part of the Spider-Man universe isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? It's Venom. He has to be involved in a Spider-Man crossover. So it really, really stinks. It started out as those first couple of issues. I was like, what are you doing? Everyone needs to read this. Then Spider Island dropped and it went down to a get on it. And it just continued to flounder from there. And like I said, it never recovered. And I can't in good conscience tell you to pass on this because I don't think it's that bad. It's just not great. But it is, I'm torn. I'm always torn on these. Pass. No. I'm going to say this is a pick it up. And pick it up has kind of become my default. I don't hate it, but it's going to be a long time until I read it again type thing. Glance over it. I had a conversation with, I think it was Storm Beagle, or rather Sam, from the Retrotopia podcast. And we were talking about what pick it up means. When I say pick it up, I literally mean if you are in a bookstore and you see it, pick it up and flip through it and determine for yourself, is this something I want to read? Give it a try. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to read the whole thing, because I don't think you will. Or if you just want something to read. Somehow you've read all the comics that we reviewed. You don't know what to read next. Go ahead and read this. It's not terrible, but I would do it. If it was me, I don't know if I would buy it. I would probably, if I had the Marvel Unlimited subscription app, I would do it there. But, so that is all I have for you guys for this episode. So I am Unbuckled Cape, thanking you for coming and joining me for this podcast review of Venom Volume 1, our Part 2 of the review. And I'm saying for this trade, pick it up. Until next time, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes. I'd like to just take a couple seconds here to give a huge shout out to my Cape Crusaders, the Patreons over at Unbuckled Comics. Without you guys, I just don't feel like I would be doing this anymore. You guys are a huge part of what keeps me motivated. So a big thank you to Storm Beagle, co-host of the Retrotopia podcast, Sergeant Pickle, Jared, Big Kid 782, Because 19, Fallen Snow Kiku, Randy of the Rewatch Play podcast, Captain Alcatraz, and Captain N, the other co-host of the Retrotopia podcast. You guys are my heroes.